month of October back in 2024, I picked up some extra cash working at a seasonal corn maze just outside of town. It wasn't a huge operation, just a local farm making some money off of Halloween. I mostly worked the last shift, which ended at about 10 p.m. My job was to walk the maze with a flashlight after it closed to make sure no one was still in there. One night during the third week of October, it was especially windy, and the sound of the corn stalks brushing together was louder than usual. I had just finished the last sweep and was heading to the exit when I heard someone running down one of the rows. At first, I thought maybe a kid had stayed behind to prank me. I yelled out, "The maze is closed." No one answered. Just the wind. I took a few steps deeper into the maze, flashing my light left and right, but all I could see were the tall walls of corn. Suddenly, something shot across the path about 20 feet in front of me. A figure. I froze. I shouted, "Hey!" Still nothing. Then I heard it. Heavy breathing. But it wasn't mine. From somewhere in the maze with me. It was slow and deliberate. The kind of breathing you do after you've been running for so long and you're trying to calm down. I started to walk backwards, trying to make it to the exit as fast as I could. I turned a corner and there he was. He was tall, and he was wearing a burlap sack mask with 2 crudely cut out eye holes. He looked like the Zodiac. He was holding a garden sickle. It was like a horror movie. He didn't move, he just stared at me. I turned and immediately bolted. I crashed through rows instead of following the path. I didn't care. I was going to get out of there no matter what. My shirt got snagged on the stalks as I ran, but I didn't care. I didn't look back until I burst out of the side of the maze, out of breath. When I finally dared to glance over my shoulder, the guy with the mask was standing at the edge of the corn, just staring at me. I ran back to the barn where the manager was counting money. When we went back to check, there was no one there. The sickle was still there, and it had remnants of blood on it. It was close to midnight on Tuesday when I stopped at this small gas station off Route 11. It was the kind of place that looks like it hasn't changed since the 80s, with buzzing fluorescent lights, cracked concrete, and a single flickering pump. I was driving back from my cousin's place after helping him move. I was spent, exhausted, I was half zoning out, and I just wanted caffeine for the last stretch home. Inside, the air smelled faintly of mildew and cleaning supplies. The cashier wasn't at the counter, but the bell above the door dinged as I came in. I figured he was in the back, restocking. I grabbed an energy drink and went to pay, but there was still no one at the cashier. That's when I heard it. It was the faintest sound, like someone whispering my name. It came from one of the aisles. I immediately froze. Then it came again, soft, but drawn out. You could barely hear it. "Hey, Jake." I instantly felt my throat tighten with a knot. My name's not that common, but there was no one in sight. I slowly stepped back toward the door, scanning the aisles. And then I saw movement. It was just a blur, near the snacks section. And immediately I saw a tall, razor-thin man that appeared at the end of the aisle. He was wearing a filthy parka and stood out completely, facing me. His face was in the shadow. I stuttered. You okay?" He tilted his head slightly, then stepped forward into the light. His face looked off. The skin didn't look like skin. It looked like stretched too tight or something, like old wax over bone. His eyes were wet and too wide, and he smiled in this painful, forced way. "Do you remember me?" he whispered. I shook my head. "No, man, I think you've got the wrong person." He took another step closer. His shoes made a weird squeak on the tile. Then, from the back room, the cashier shouted, "Hey, you can't be back there!" The man snapped his head towards the sound, that awful grin still frozen on his face. He bolted, not towards the back, but towards me. I turned and ran out the front door, spilling my drink, and jumped in my car. In the rearview mirror, under the harsh white light of the pumps, I saw him standing perfectly still outside the glass doors. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking up at the security camera with a smile. I told the cops after I called them. They checked the footage later that week. The cashier called me himself. He said that the cameras glitched from the moment I walked in until a minute after I drove away. But he sent me a single still frame from right after the glitch cleared. It showed the man standing in the middle of the store, staring straight at the lens. And on the counter where I'd set my drink down, there was a single handprint. It wasn't from a glove. It looked burned into wood. Last autumn, my girlfriend and I booked a cheap Airbnb in Maine for a weekend getaway. We had been wanting to travel, and this was the perfect opportunity. It was a small cabin, deep in the woods, listed by an older couple who said they lived nearby in case of emergencies. Convenient, in case. The drive up was beautiful, but by the time we arrived, it was late, nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. The cabin was small, 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a note on the counter that said, "Enjoy your stay. Please don't open the basement door. Thanks. Jim and Marla." It was weird, but we shrugged it off. Maybe it was just for storage. The first night was fine, except for rain and the occasional creak from the wood floors. But around 3 a.m., we both woke up to a rhythmic sound. Faint, but we couldn't mistake it. It was coming from the floor. I got up and went to the living room. Holding my flashlight, the sound got louder the closer I got to the small door in the hallway, the one leading to the basement. "Hello?" I whispered. The thumping immediately stopped, just like that. The next morning, I texted the hosts, asking if they had an animal trap down there or something. They didn't respond. That night it started again. This time, it wasn't thumping. It was knocking. Slow, deliberate knocks, like someone asking to come up. My girlfriend at the time begged me not to open it, but I couldn't just ignore it again. I crouched down and tried to look through the keyhole, but it was pitch black inside. Then, I swear to God, I heard a voice whisper through the keyhole. "Can you help me?" I fell backward and yelled. My girlfriend ran into the room, crying, begging me to leave. We packed up and drove straight to a motel. The next morning, I got a text from the Airbnb host. All it said was, "We're so sorry you heard that again. The property's been having that issue for years." I texted back, "What do you mean, again?" They left me on red. A week later, I checked the Airbnb listing out of curiosity. It was gone, completely deleted. A few weeks later, I drove back up to that cabin just to see if it was still there. It was completely boarded up, with police tape surrounding it. I never found out what happened to the Airbnb until I Googled the address and found an old article from 1998. There was a photo of the cabin. The headline said, "Local couple found dead in home. Missing son believed to be in basement." I deliver food for a living, mostly overnight shifts. You'd be surprised at how many people order fast food at 2 or 3 in the morning. A few months ago, I got an order from a house way out of town, down narrow dirt roads surrounded by woods. No porch light, No cars, no sign of anyone home. Just a note taped to the door. Leave it in the trunk of the blue sedan. Cash under the mat. There was a blue sedan parked at the edge of the trees. The trunk was closed. I figured it was weird, but maybe they just don't want contact. So I set the bag on the trunk, took the cash, and that's when I noticed the back window. Someone was sitting inside. They weren't moving. They weren't breathing. They were just sitting there. I called out, "Your food's here." No response. The figure didn't even twitch. I walked closer and raised my phone flashlight. The glass was slightly tinted, but not completely blacked out. I could make out the shape of a face. Then, in a split second, the head snapped toward me. I stumbled backwards. The car didn't move. No engine sound, nothing. But I could feel eyes on me, like someone was watching me. I immediately dropped the food and ran to my car. When I got inside, I turned the ignition on and looked in my rearview mirror. The blue sedan's trunk was open. When I got home later, I couldn't sleep. I checked the order history to see who it was. The address was listed as invalid, removed. A few days later, I saw a local news report. Some police found an abandoned car matching that description of a service road. Same model, same color, with human remains inside the trunk. They never identified the driver, and I never went back there.